So I'll give you a quick story before we take a break that kind of gets back to this idea of pills versus no pills. And one of the people I was told that I needed to talk to when I researched my book was Kathy Uncino. Kathy is a gerontological social worker who consults around different living environments around the country. She lives in Manhattan. And she went to a nursing home and asked them, as she always does, tell me about your most challenging situation. And so they told her about a guy who I call Alex in the book. And he hadn't been at that nursing home for more than several weeks, but he was already their number one person of concern. And he had this sort of stereotypical distress, which was really bothering people. And what he would do was every night, right around 6 o'clock, right around the end of dinner, he would start getting wound up. And he would be sitting in his chair finishing his meal. He'd start to get antsy and nervous. And then he'd get up and he'd start pacing. And he had aphasia, so he didn't say things that made sense. So he walked around and he'd say this thing over and over again, which the staff interpreted as gibberish, nonsense. And then he got more frustrated, and he'd go to the nursing station, and he'd start throwing things and slamming the drawers and get very violent and very hard to redirect. He'd been seen by the geriatrician and the psychiatrist, and he was now on a cocktail of 3 very potent psychiatric medications. They were sedating him a bit, but they were not stopping this from happening. And his diagnosis was sundown syndrome with severe agitation. It was happening at 6 o'clock every night, so they labeled him as sundown syndrome. So Kathy asked the very important question, what else do you know about Alex? The truth was they didn't know much because they were using their medical eyes. They knew his diagnoses, his medications. They did what we all do when we don't know anything about somebody. They went to the social work note, figured, I'm sure the social worker asked him about him, you know. And they didn't have much there either. All they found, they knew he was married, and his wife and son and daughter were very supportive. But what they found out was that he was a very successful businessman during his career, traveled all over the country extensively. And that's all they knew. And Kathy said, well, we got to find out a lot more about Alex. But in the meantime, let's see if we can figure out what's going on in his head. So how about we try a role play? Who'd like to play Alex? Well, you know what the staff did when she suggested that. They said, oh, no, I don't want to do a role play. Come on, that's stupid. Just tell us what to do. You know, we don't want to play any games. And she said, come on, we have to get inside his skin. We have to understand. Somebody just play along with me. So finally, after a lot of prodding, the evening nurse, who had seen this every day, said, okay, fine, let's get this over with. And so they took her over to Alex's chair right in the dining room. And they sat him right in the chair. See you later, Smith. My videographer is really frustrated because I move around a lot. So they sat him right in the chair in the dining room, and they said to her, okay, block us out. Shift your focus. Try to get inside Alex's body. Try to see what he sees, feel what he feels. And when you feel like you're centered and you've got it, then just show us what he does. So she focused, she blocked him out, she thought about Alex, she tried to get inside his skin, and she finally just started getting nervous and jerky. And after she did that, she got up and she started pacing around and saying this nonsense thing he said all the time, which was, I need a line, I need a line, I need a line. And all of a sudden she stopped and she said, oh, maybe he means a telephone line. I wonder if he wants to call home. So Kathy said, I don't know, we need to find out more about him, but why don't you try that tonight and see what happens. So that night, as dinner was starting to wind up, she went up to Alex and she said, Alex, would you like to call your wife? And he said yes. So after dinner, she took him to the nursing station. She sat him down, dialed the phone, held it up, let him talk to his wife, and he was calm that night. And she did it the next night. He was calm again, and the next night. And to make a long story short, what they found out when they got to know Alex better was that as a businessman, everywhere he traveled in the country, every night, he called his wife, said, I love you, said good night. And this was something that had been taken from him, not out of cruelty, but out of ignorance, because they didn't know him as a person. And it was 6 o'clock, dinner was finishing up. He'd been married for decades. He wanted to connect, and he didn't have this opportunity. Well, what happened was he got off all 3 medications. His sundown syndrome was cured. And his wife, who was about to call the doctor for a sleeping pill, was also cured because she was so worried about him that she couldn't sleep at night. So the reason I tell the story is not just, oh, they came up with a great solution, but let's go back to Dr. Cohen-Mansfield's question. Suppose on day 1 they had had the perfect pill that had taken away his distress without any side effects. Would they have helped Alex? Would they have given him what he really needed? And that's the flaw in thinking that there's going to be a better pill out there that we can come up with. We have to go deeper than that. We have to find out other things.